Dr. Mehran Kamrava, thank you for joining us today at the Qatar International Academy for Security Studies. We are very pleased to welcome you. You are a professor of government at Georgetown University in Qatar, the director of the Iranian Studies Unit at the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies. Your scholarship has shaped debates on Iran, the Persian Gulf, and the Middle Eastern politics, with particular attention to state power, revolution, ideology, regime resilience, and regional security. Your major recent works include How Islam Rules in Iran, Theology and Theocracy in the Islamic Republic, Righteous Politics, Power and Resilience in Iran, and last but not least, Troubled Waters, Insecurity in the Persian Gulf. So together, these publications address some of the central questions needed to understand Iran today: how the Islamic Republic governs, how it adapts under pressure, and how its regional environment shapes its choices. At this critical moment, we are grateful for the opportunity to hear your insights on Iran's domestic order, regional strategy, and wider implication in the Middle East. So welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure being here. Thank you.
We would like to start our discussion today by seeking your interpretation for the nature of the Islamic Republic today. What is the relation between religion, state power, ideology, and regime survival in Iran?
The Islamic Republic has evolved over the years and decades. We're approaching about 5 decades, 50 years of the Islamic Republic, and over time it has emerged. And currently, what we're seeing is that the nature of state-religion relations are in flux. They're changing. The current supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has not been seen. He has been in office only a few months under war conditions, actually since late February of 2026. And so we still don't know exactly to what extent, if any, he will be involved in shaping the theological direction and the ideological disposition of the Islamic Republic. It took Ali Khamenei something close to a decade to establish and consolidate his power as the supreme leader. And whether after the revolution, after the war, Mojtaba Khamenei will be able to also consolidate his rule and become involved in either the day-to-day running of the government or in the overall ideological direction of the country is yet to be seen. One of the things we've discovered in the behavior of the Iranian system over the last couple of decades is that every time that the legitimacy of the state is threatened, if there's a war, if there is domestic disturbance, whatever that legitimacy crisis might be, one of the things we've seen is that it loosens up on some of its religious dictates. And so, for example, it does not enforce the mandatory hijab as harshly as it does. And right now, as the war continues to unfold in Iran, one of the things we've seen is that the enforcement of religious morality has been conspicuously absent. And so state-religion relations have shifted. Now, whether or not that shift will continue to persevere after the war is over, or whether the state will continue to reassert its ideological character and ideological preferences, is yet to be seen.
This shift, it happened under pressure, under the pressure of the war, or it was in a way an organic development of the situation since Khamenei was super old when he was assassinated?
It didn't necessarily have to do with Khamenei's age, but it was a combination of both organic evolution of the Islamic Republic, the fact that within the Islamic Republic, within the deep state of the Islamic Republic, there are figures that advocate greater social freedom and social liberties. And also the fact that even those hardliners that try to continue with the original principles of the revolution during moments of crisis, they had to pick their battles. And so they agreed to greater social freedoms in order to stay in power.
Um, how do formal institutions, informal power networks, or the succession of politics and elite dynamics contribute to regime resilience in Iran?
In a number of ways. One of the things we see in Iran, and this is not unique to Iran, we've seen it in places like Egypt, for example, is a lot of the commanders of the Revolutionary Guards, when they retire, they either go into business or they go into elected offices of the state, or they become provincial governors, they become mayors, they have various types of political appointments, or if they go into business, they have contacts with the Revolutionary Guards or with other entities of the state, and so it's state-related businesses. And so there is an almost organic nexus between the state and the business community. And of course, these linkages between the state and the business community have been strengthened as a result of international sanctions, given the fact that foreign direct investment in Iran is very little, if any at all, and so it's domestic contractors that are really in charge of the country's development and economic growth. So that is in itself a source of great state resilience. Also, we have elite rotation within the political system. The current president is reformist. Much of the executive comes from the reformist camp. Prior to the reformist camp, we had hardline administration of Ebrahim Raisi. And so this elite rotation in and out of office, the fact that there's a safety valve of kind of electing either a reformist president or reformist members of parliament enables the state to maintain a semblance of legitimacy. That legitimacy over time has declined, but it's still there. That electoral legitimacy continues. And then last but by no means least is the fact that the state, the Islamic Republic state, is highly complex, multi-layered. Everything from the supreme leader to the local prayer imam is an actor within the state. There's deep penetration of Iranian society, not just at the street level, but at the level of provinces, towns, small villages. And so it's a deeply entrenched and institutionalized state, whereby, as we saw, even if the supreme leader is removed suddenly, the state continues to function and has resilience.
Now, what would you say regarding the mechanisms that drive the Iranian regime legitimacy within Iran?
Well, it's a highly ideological state, the Islamic Republic. So it used to be that up until 2021, the heat of COVID pandemic, the assumption was that the Islamic Republic had about something like 20% legitimacy among the population. Now, if the Iranian population is 90 million, you're looking at just below 20 million people that support the state proactively. That's a huge base of support. Now, even if that base of support has been halved over the last 5 years or so, now we're looking at something like 10 million Iranians who are proactively supportive. They believe in the legitimacy of the political system. And so that ideological depth and resilience of the state, even if it's only 10% deep, still continues to be highly robust.
This one. What has been the effect of the sanctions on external pressure on Iran's political order?
One of the things that the sanctions have done is that they have helped disempower the middle classes. They have hollowed out what was once a very robust and vibrant civil society scene in Iran, particularly in the 1990s. There was a huge outburst and explosion of civil society activism. People who were from the middle classes, politically independent, and they were doing things that the state either couldn't do or would not be willing to do. And so one of the most drastic effects of the sanctions has been on the middle classes in the sense that it has disempowered the middle classes. It has hollowed out civil society. Groups, for example, that looked after the refugees, artistic groups, independent associations for engineers, teachers, nurses, and other corporate groups throughout Iranian society. And that has helped the resilience and the authoritarianism of the political system, a political system that has increasingly become authoritarian and disinterested in what the people have to say, and able really in many ways to easily suppress any pressures from below.
So it is in a way weakening the middle class, but empowering the elite class who is profiting from these sanctions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a minute ago, I mentioned the fact that the sanctions have helped Revolutionary Guard-related businesses and contractors in Iran. So what we've seen is, as you mentioned, on the one hand, not only has society been weakened, but the state and state-affiliated institutions have become strengthened in the process because of the sanctions.
I would like to jump to another question regarding also the economy of Iran. How do considerations regarding the cost of the current confrontation on Iran's economy and infrastructure impact in a way its political decision, if at all?
The Iranian economy is suffering as a result of the war. As you know, from the very beginning, when the war erupted on February 28 of 2026, Iran cut off the internet. And they cut off the internet because of GPS and for various security considerations. And recent estimates are in Iran that every day that the internet is closed, the country is suffering something between $30 to $40 million worth of economic losses. Iran tends to be a highly wired country, has a very robust e-economy, and a very well-developed kind of set of economic interactions on the internet, Instagram. And so the closure of the internet alone is costing the country hugely, millions, tens of millions of dollars every single day. Now, this is not to, this does not count costs of bridges, factories, steel plant, the Middle East's largest steel mill factory, roads and hospitals that have been damaged. 20 Iranian universities have been bombed. 600 educational institutions so far have been bombed. And of course, every day Donald Trump promises that unless Iran signs the peace agreement, he will destroy Iranian electric power plants and power grid and others. So the economic damage has been incredibly costly. And that damage is being particularly felt by the private sector, that's not state-supported, that has, because of the sanctions, learned in many ways to be self-sufficient, relies on the e-economy, and it is suffering tremendously as a result of this war.
Do you think that people who has a word or a decision to make regarding the economy sector are participating actively in this decision war, in the decisions regarding the war?
There are different actors in the Iranian state that have their own agendas. And in some ways, they see this war as a tragic opportunity to push their agendas forward. So, for example, the Revolutionary Guard commanders that are now running the show, running the Revolutionary Guards, because their senior leaders were, quote unquote, decapitated in the war. These commanders currently are younger, they're in their 40s. They got their experience in Syria and in Iraq fighting Daesh. And so these guys see this war as an opportunity to prove their mettle. They see this war as an opportunity to show the United States and America's regional allies, Bahrain, UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, how much they can inflict damage on United States and on America's allies. So they see this war as an opportunity to push their own agendas forward. The people who are worried about economic delivery, the executive, they want this war to end as soon and as quickly as possible. They're the ones who are driving diplomacy and kind of, they're trying to further diplomacy, but of course, without looking as if they're giving into American bullying and they're being scared by Donald Trump's social media posts. So one of the things we see is this subtle tug of war and these conflicting interests play out in Iran, pretty much like the conflicting interests that are happening in the United States with people who see this as an opportunity to kind of once and for all get rid of the Islamic Republic, whereas others who don't want the war to drag the United States into another endless war. There are also conflicting opportunities in Iran, and economic considerations tend to be front and center in these calculations.
Yeah, I see. How would you describe Iran's current regional strategy? Is it Tehran pursuing hegemony, strategic depth, asymmetric deterrence, a defensive network of influence, or some combination of these factors?
I think it's too early to tell what Iran's regional strategy is going to be moving forward. And the reason I say that is because during and immediately after the June 2025 12-day war, we thought the axis of resistance was dead. What we saw in the 12-day war was that Hezbollah was not a factor. Hamas was struggling to simply survive. The Yemeni Houthis didn't necessarily do anything. And so the assumption was that Iran had lost the axis of resistance and was recalibrating its security strategy by relying primarily on its ballistic missiles. We were in for a surprise because during this war, what we've discovered is that the axis of resistance still has a life left in it. The Lebanese Hezbollah attacked Israel, of course, to tragic consequences for Lebanon, but they did attack. And the Houthis that have lobbed one or two missiles at Israel have actually made their presence felt. And what we're discovering is that their threat to close Bab el-Mandab Strait is a viable threat that they haven't yet played. So the question then becomes, to what extent can Iran hold on to these regional cards? Will Iran be able to play a coordinating role insofar as traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is concerned? Or is that simply a bargaining chip that Iran keeps talking about? And is that something that is a red line for the United States? So I think in the coming months, it will become increasingly more clear what Iran's regional security strategy is. Because right now we're only seeing indications of kind of what Iran's cards are and what Iran's resources are. And we don't know if these are more longer lasting or if these are episodic.
I have one last question. How can we interpret the divergence between statements about the severity of the Iranian response made by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, Chief Commander Ahmad Vahadi, and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi? What does this reveal about the decision-making process between Iranian diplomacy and security institutions?
One of the things we have witnessed over the last month and a half or so is that a division of labor has emerged in Iran, whereby the president, Masoud Pezeshkian, is running the domestic politics of the country. He's running Iran, the Iranian state domestically. The Revolutionary Guards is running the war. They're running the war. And Araghchi and the foreign ministry, they're running the Iranian diplomacy. And there's something called the Supreme National Security Council in Iran, which is the chief institution for decision making. And within the Supreme National Security Council, there is something called the Defense Council, which was activated in the 12-day war or reactivated in the 12-day war. And so what we're seeing is some sort of a coordination. Now, we hear a lot of conflicting statements often coming out of Tehran. And to what extent these conflicting statements are posturing, meant for an American audience or a domestic audience inside Iran? To what extent are they reflections of disagreements within the state? We don't quite know. But it so far appears that Iran is pursuing a coordinated strategy. On the one hand, talking tough, holding the line tough on security issues. On the other hand, showing a willingness to negotiate, but not necessarily wanting to show weakness, while at the same time, the domestic circumstances, the domestic state is continuing to function under war conditions. Salaries have to be paid, electricity is delivered, water is delivered, the state has to function. And so that function continues under the auspices of the executive. Then the foreign ministry is doing the negotiations, and the Revolutionary Guards is conducting the war.
So would you say it's all coordinated in a way? There is coordination between these three components you were mentioning?
Absolutely. There appears to be a very close institutional coordination within Iran, within the Iranian political system.
Thank you for your time today. It was really our pleasure.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.